John Lloyd was once the man the entire world envied. He had Hollywood movie star looks, a backhand that made legends nod in approval, and a wedding ring on the finger the ice maiden herself, Chris Evert. The press called it the tennis world's wedding of the century. But life is never just a bed of roses. Born on August 27, 1954, in Leigh-on-Sea, Essex, England, John grew up in a household where tennis was a way of life. His parents were devoted to the sport, and that passion flowed naturally to their three sons, David, John, and Tony, while his oldest brother David would go on to build the legendary David Lloyd leisure empire. John was the artist of the family, golden-haired, bright-eyed, and naturally charming. He seemed almost out of place in gritty Essex, but those cold, frost-covered public courts shaped him into something extraordinary. He learned not to overpower the ball, but to dance with it, moving lightly and elegantly, borrowing pace from opponents and returning shots that were soft yet dangerous. His style was eventually likened to poetry on the court. Yet, that beauty came with a warning. An old coach once sighed after watching John play and said plainly, "The boy is too nice to be a world champion. You need the killer instinct of a predator." That remark followed John like a haunting prophecy for the rest of his career. The pressure only multiplied. Britain had been starred a Grand Slam champion since the era of Fred Perry, and the public rushed to place the weight of an entire nation on John's shoulders. He was celebrated as a star before he had actually won anything major. But across the ocean, American players like Jimmy Connors and John McEnroe were being forged in a completely different fire. They were hungry. They were aggressive. They treated the court as a battlefield, not a stage. In December 1977, John stepped onto the court at the Keong Lawn Tennis Club in Melbourne for the Australian Open final. His opponent was Vitas Gerulaitis, the Lithuanian lion with flowing curly hair and explosive attacking tennis. John played the best tennis of his life. He moved like a phantom. His one-handed backhand painted exquisite curves that left Vitas rooted to the spot. He LED'd the match. The crowd chanted his name. The silver trophy seemed just inches from his fingertips. But in that decisive moment, the old prophecy struck. Instead of unleashing a killer shot, he hesitated. Vitas did not. The fifth set slipped away point by point, and John Lloyd became the first British male in the Open ERA to reach a Grand Slam singles final and lose. That night in the quiet locker room, he stared into the void and understood something painful about himself. He had the talent, but lacked the ruthlessness to reach the very top. Then came Chris Evert. At a players' party at Wimbledon in the summer of 1978, John saw a woman who wasn't just a player, but a queen. She possessed a devastating two-handed backhand and an icy demeanor that terrified every opponent she faced. Their wedding in 1979 was the royal wedding of the sports world. Paparazzi climbed trees to photograph the couple, and millions of fans believed this was an eternally happy ending. But what followed was a silent, brutal psychological war that John never saw coming. Chris Evert kept winning. Grand Slam titles, world number one rankings, goddess-level status. Meanwhile, John's career collapsed. He fell from the top 30 to outside the top 100, and then catastrophically to rank 300. The media pinned a mocking label on him that cut deeper than any defeat. Mr. Chris Evert. He loved her, but her success crushed him. He went on the court not to win, but simply to avoid humiliation. And in sport, when you play with the fear of losing, defeat is always inevitable. After 8 painful years, they divorced in 1987. John walked away with a shattered career, a broken heart, and the title of Chris Evert's ex-husband clinging to him like a curse. Many assumed that was a Yendi of John Lloyd. They were wrong. The blood flowing in John's veins carried sharp business genes from the Lloyd family. Returning to England, he rebuilt himself with quiet determination. His brother David's fitness and lifestyle empire, the David Lloyd Leisure Chain, became part of John's financial resurrection. As an ambassador, shareholder, and living symbol of class and global tennis prestige, John helped expand an empire worth hundreds of millions. His 3 decades as a star commentator for the BBC and Sky Sports delivered stable, generous income while cementing his status as the most authoritative voice in British tennis broadcasting. By 2025, John Lloyd's net worth stood at an estimated £12 to £15 million. He lives near Wimbledon in a high-end London apartment, visits Florida regularly, and moves in circles that most people only read about. He counts Sir Richard Branson and Sir Cliff Richard among his closest friends, enjoying private islands and luxury yachts not because he owns them, but because he belongs to a world where relationships open doors that money alone cannot. At Wimbledon, he sits in the royal box, sharing tea with Prince William and Princess Kate, treated not as a guest, but as family. At 71, John Lloyd is a happy gentleman. The wounds from his marriage to Chris Everett healed long ago. Today they sit together in the royal box, laughing and reminiscing like old soulmates. He has stripped away every last trace of Mr. Chris Everett label to become, fully and unapologetically, John Lloyd. His story is not about Grand Slam titles or world rankings. It is about a very human man who loved deeply, stumbled badly, got lost in someone else's shadow, and fought his way back to himself. The greatest victory of his life was never defeating an opponent across the net. It was conquering the insecurities within himself and choosing, every single day, to live with dignity, purpose, and class.